Okay, trying to get started here. It's going slow on my computer. Let's see here. Just like last time, my camera doesn't seem to be recognized. Okay, getting going here.
Like that, and
all right, things are starting to pop up now.
And we
it says connecting to audio for a few folks.
Doing something like that, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to not help people.
Okay, I hear some voices, so my computer's a little slow here in getting started up. Hello there, Lauren, I see you.
Hello.
Oh, now it says connecting to
Hello.
audio for Lauren again. Okay. Number of folks say connecting to audio. For some reason, again, I just can't get the camera on my computer, even though I use it on other video cons and such. It is not connecting for me. So again, sorry, you see the Drive Electric green feather flag instead of me.
Get to where we are, and
Sharon? Okay.
All right, this is Dave. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. I see a thumbs up there.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, okay. Here I am waving, and I just said the camera on my computer's not working for some reason. All right, habits. Bill, it looks like you're outdoors there, but it does also kind of look like the edges of you are pixelated a little bit, so I'm guessing that you're in front of a background.
We're here all the time. We're here all the time.
Yeah, that's correct, Dave.
So we, physically couldn't do anything. Couldn't go out.
Okay.
So,
Does Laura Cochran have two frames, one with just a name and another with a picture? Is that?
I do see two. Lauren, are you logged in two different ways?
in the past before.
Yes, I'm dialed in by phone, and I'm also on the computer because I get better audio quality when I log in by phone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we hear just fine.
Okay, very good.
It does kind of answer that question, though, about why we see a box with your name and then another box with your video. So that's good. Okay. So, yeah, I heard a few other voices in the background there. So unless you want to interrupt and ask a question or something, I ask that folks mute if possible. I saw that there were 33 and then 34 registered folks. So that sounds good. And so a couple of different things that we'll do here tonight. So before we let Lauren loose and hear all these great things about the electric bus world, I'll just mention a few things. So there's lots happening in the news. I, in the email that went out, put in a couple of notes about things happening with pickup trucks and things like that. And we can talk about those at the end. But one other thing that I am trying this time is a poll. And I set up a couple of poll questions in advance, just a couple of simple ones. And so let's see if we can call those up or not. My computer was running really slow and getting going here. All right, there's the polls tab. And okay, so a couple of simple questions, and I'll put them out there. I don't know exactly how they'll show up for you folks, but anytime during this first hour or so, if you'd like to go ahead and just answer those two questions, we can see about them. It just has to do with who has an EV, how many, and if you're interested in an electric pickup truck. So I'll go ahead and put that out there. I don't know if it just pops up on your screen or you have to do something to see it.
Yeah, it just popped up on mine.
Okay. So if it's a separate window like I expected as it is on mine, you can just put that off to the side. You can answer whenever. And as I said, we will talk about this during the second hour, just as something to spur people's opinions and things like that. So good that we got a good set of folks here tonight. And we are, in case folks have to leave sometime during the middle, we are set up for the first Thursday in July with Jeff Wolf, who will be talking about his small company that does innovative things with the electrical grid. So, and Lauren, of course, you're also invited to dial in anytime, sign up anytime. But I just want to mention that now so that folks are aware in case some folks need to leave early rather than save that to the very end. But I think it's pretty exciting that we've got Lauren back again. So for folks that don't know, we had Lauren on a while back, and we all know there's been a lot more development in the electric bus world. And also, I believe you used the word autonomous, Lauren, in your little write-up. And so if there's some words about that, I think it'd be interesting. Back in August, when I went to the National Renewable Energy Lab, which is out in Colorado, I went out there with a number of different folks. We got a tour, and as we were there, they had a couple of small, like 10, 15 person people movers that they had just gotten. So they hadn't let people start using them yet, but they were driving around on their own on campus, only going up to like 15 miles an hour or something like that. But their campus is like a lot of university campuses and others where you have separate buildings and different parking areas and things that people might need to come and go to. Another point of the National Renewable Energy Lab is that they had just upped the number of charging locations for employees there. I think it went up from something like 36 up to 129. They just really upped that number a lot. So you can tell they're really serious about electric vehicles out there. But back to the electric buses, as I said, they had just gotten 2 of these people movers. They were going to just restrict them to campus, so it'd be a known set of people in a known area where they would be driving, and they were electric. And so they would get some experience with those, and I haven't heard back since then. But I think it's real exciting, the number of locations where electric buses have been brought in. I know that Robert had talked about some over in the Port Arthur area. Robert, I see that your name there, so I think you're on. So that'll be good. And unless there are any other general comments from folks, I'll turn it over to Lauren at this point. Okay, Lauren.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, it does? Okay. Well, let
It
me
does.
see. I can do something about that then.
Okay.
Because that should definitely be on. Let's see. Okay, so first option I saw here said to make you host, Lauren, so then you should be able to share your screen then.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
All right. Can you guys see the screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is it in the weird view or the normal view?
Normal.
You can only see one slide, not 2?
Actually, main slide plus another slide.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Okay, let me change the display settings.
Yeah, it looks like presenter mode because
Better?
the coming slide.
You got
Okay.
That's bigger. That's better.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So thank you for having me back. This is so exciting for me. This is my 3rd time presenting in front of this group, and it's special for me because I have covered 42% of the United States in terms of my sales territory and half of Canada. But nothing means more to me than talking about electrification in Houston. I'm a native Houstonian, and so it's just exciting for me to talk to you guys about this. And I just want to thank you for your continued interest in battery electric buses and in electrification. You have a strong voice, and I know you've talked to Houston Metro and urged support of electrification of their fleet. And so I just wanted to start by saying this is exciting for me, and thank you. So a little bit about Proterra. We're a battery electric bus and charger manufacturer headquartered in Burlingame, California. All we make are battery electric buses and chargers. We've since expanded our product portfolio to include other modeling services, data collection on vehicles and chargers, infrastructure planning, but we don't build any other vehicle, no diesel, natural gas, hybrid buses, etc. And so our mission is to advance EV technology and to be the world's best manufacturer of that technology. So we manufacture our batteries at our headquarters in Burlingame, which is essentially San Francisco, and we manufacture our 35 and 40-foot heavy-duty transit buses in Southern California, in Los Angeles, and also in Greenville, South Carolina. We have grown significantly. When I joined Proterra in 2017, so 3 years ago, I think I was probably the 250th employee, and now we have 603 employees. So we're growing as a company in response to the demand for battery electric buses in the transit and commercial markets. We have over 120 customers. We are hopefully going to be announcing our 1,000th bus sold this year. 11 million miles of service and 55 million pounds of CO2 emissions avoided. On the right-hand side, and I know there's a lot going on in this screen, you'll see that 75% of the content on our vehicle is domestic. And so since most of our customers are transit agencies and they're using federal dollars to purchase their buses, there is a 75% domestic content requirement. And so it used to be 70%, and so at that time we exceeded the domestic content requirement, and we meet that requirement today. We have strong transportation expertise. Many of our C-level staff and executives came from Tesla. Our chief technology officer came from Tesla's battery engineering department. That's one of the reasons that we located our headquarters in Silicon Valley so that we could leverage the talent coming out of places like Tesla. We are still a privately held company backed by Edison International, Constellation Energy. They're two of the US's largest utilities. And one thing that we've learned, and since our company has been in business, is that partnership with utilities is so critical. As we're seeing larger deployments, the bus part is sort of the easy part now, and the infrastructure to recharge large fleets, that's really, kind of a gating factor to full fleet electrification. So I have a slide on that. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Just pictures here of our manufacturing facilities. As I mentioned, we do make 35 and 40-foot buses. We also manufacture chargers and our own batteries. So what's happening in the public transit market? Rapidly shifting to EV. Our first bus was sold in 2009 to Foothill Transit. Some of you may remember that I worked on that project, and the cost of our bus at that time was $1.2 million. The first three of anything is very expensive, but since we're nearing our 1,000th bus, and now every major American bus OEM is now in the electric bus market, we are achieving economies of scale. And so now our bus, the same bus, is almost half the cost that it was 10 years ago. And so why is that? Why are we seeing this rapid adoption of EV, and why are we seeing it outpace battery or electric adoption on the light duty side? transit buses, as you guys know, run on fixed routes. They have known duty cycles, unlike personal vehicles, and we're also achieving greater range and charging standardization, and which really became important as other OEMs stepped up into this game. And so the other major US bus manufacturers are New Flyer, they're actually a Canadian company, Gillig, another American company, and BYD, which is a Chinese electric bus manufacturer. They also make cars and a lot of other things. So today, 10% of transit buses are, I just want to let you know, it says 5 people have entered the waiting room and are waiting. Do I need to let them in?
Yes, please.
Oh, admit all. Okay,
Yeah.
I've admitted them all. Welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
Please mute yourself if you just joined us. Sure thing. So 10% of buses today are battery electric, and about 20% of new bus purchases are battery electric. So we're seeing a rapid adoption. Part of that spike is due to dedicated federal funding for battery electric buses through the Federal Transit Administration's Low-No program. This is sadly the last year that that program is authorized, but we're hoping we can get it in the next surface transportation bill. But the funding and the improvements in range and charging standardization have helped us, you know, achieve this spike. So we'll talk a little bit more about charging standardization in the slides to come, but on improved range, I know I've shared this with the group before, Proterra holds the world record for the longest range ever traveled by any EV, bus, truck, car on a single charge ever. We traveled 1,101.2 miles at the end of 2017. Okay. So in terms of market share, we have delivered more battery electric buses in North America than any other manufacturer to date. And we've delivered almost half of all the battery electric buses. And what's really unique about Proterra is, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is all we make. We are the only purpose-built electric bus manufacturer. And as EV enthusiasts, you guys know how important it is to have a purpose-built vehicle. I'm sure we can all name car companies that tried to take a diesel or gasoline platform and turned it into an electric vehicle, and it just doesn't work from an efficiency standpoint. So we're really proud to lead the market in this space, and it's because we're vertically integrated. We can offer the whole system to the customer. We're really a one-stop shop where our competitors, when you buy the bus from them, you're just buying the bus. You have to go somewhere else and get the charger, somewhere else to coordinate infrastructure, data management, etc. All right, so here are our customers. And at one point when I probably gave this presentation, I think for the first time in 2016, maybe 2017, you could read this list. But what I wanted to focus on today are the customers we have in Texas. And so we have 6 customers here. San Antonio, an early adopter. Capital Metro in Austin has 2 buses. They have 4 more being built right now. And they've committed to 100% electrification of their fleet. City Bus, believe it or not, in Lubbock, Texas, has 2 of our buses, and they have tried for the past couple of years to secure additional federal funding to add to their electric bus fleet. Port Arthur Transit, you mentioned at the beginning of this call, they have a 6 bus fleet. They're expanding it to 10 buses, and they have 10 buses on order from Proterra. So they will be a 100% battery electric fleet, although they're on the smaller side. Brazos Transit District, which is a rural transit operator that serves Bryan College Station and Texas A&M University. They are a recent customer, and so their buses will be built next year. And then finally, Dallas DART has 7 Proterra buses. And again, they've also sought federal funding to expand their electric bus fleet. Now, right now, they have a 100% compressed natural gas fleet, and they're making the decision right now whether or not they want to go 100% electric. Okay, hold on. Mike has entered. I'm going to let Mike in.
What's
All
that?
right, that sounds good. And
One
also, I'd
person is
like to ask
admit.
folks to mute their mics so that we don't catch the background sounds. I see there's 3 or 4 people. I can't make a change right now since I've handed over the host duties, but I'm just asking folks to mute their mics. Thanks. Go ahead, Lauren.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so like I said, at Proterra, we say we're different by design. And what that means, again, is that we have a purpose-built vehicle built from the ground up to be an electric bus. Our competitors, on the other hand, take their natural gas or diesel platform, they take out the engine, and then they put the batteries in the back of the bus. Since we started with a clean sheet design, we're able to build modular and flexible energy storage systems, which helps us really tailor the vehicle that we offer to each agency based on the length of their routes. And it also allowed us to build the highest performing vehicle in its class. So since we started from clean sheet of paper, we did not use aluminum or steel, which conventionally powered buses are built out of. We actually use a composite frame, which significantly reduces the weight of the vehicle and thus improves the efficiency. So we have unmatched performance, fastest acceleration, and greatest horsepower for out of all vehicles in this class. The composite body also is great in terms of safety and durability. So it's a non-conductive structure, and it's also highly durable. If any of you are familiar with the brand Yeti, they make coolers and they're bear proof and they're basically like apocalypse proof. That is essentially what this structure is. So in the event of an accident or any other kind of impact, that's absorbed across the vehicle, and transit buses operate 40,000 miles a year. They're out there, 18 hours a day. They get in a lot of accidents. And so being able to reduce that downtime with the durable structure is a win for the transit agency. And the lighter weight is also a win for us in terms of efficiency and ultimately range. So this image shows where the batteries are placed on our E2 bus. So an E2 has 440 kilowatt hours of onboard energy storage. Those blue rectangles you see underneath the floor represent the battery packs. So they're stored in between, underneath the floor, in between the 2 wheel wells. And then on our longest range bus, which is 660 kilowatt hours, we put 2 packs on the roof. But again, because we started with a clean sheet of paper, we don't have batteries in the back of the bus where vehicles are typically hit. We don't have batteries inside the passenger compartment. And so we offer the greatest placement of batteries for weight distribution and for safety and stability. We offer 3 models, our XR, which is extended range, E2, and E2 Max. So 220 kilowatt hour bus, all the way up to 660 kilowatt hours. Each pack is a 110 kilowatt hour pack. And so when I spoke earlier about a modular energy storage system, we work with transit agencies to look at their routes, the length of the route, the hours of day that the bus is going to be in service, and then we make a recommendation which bus model is right for them based on their duty cycle. So the E2 Max, it is, if Houston Metro were buying buses, I would recommend the E2 Max. Their buses are in service, a long time. It's hot here. They have the HVAC running all the time. And so you would need that extra range to power the bus. And in fact, we didn't bring an E2 Max, but we brought an E2 with our dual power drivetrain, which I'll talk about, to Houston Metro 2 years ago and did a route simulation in August. And I think we achieved over 200 miles of range on a single charge. And that was not even our longest range product. And I think it was over 100 degrees that day. It was, we were in one of our heat waves. Okay, so we offer 2 drivetrains, our dual power and ProDrive drivetrain. The ProDrive is standard. It's a single motor and a single 2-speed gearbox. The dual power drivetrain, as the name suggests, is dual motor. And most of our customers who buy the dual power are trying to achieve one of two things, or maybe both. Greater range. So 2 motors gives us better operating efficiency, better regen capacity. So we get about 20% better efficiency with the dual power motor. And we also have customers who buy the dual power for the terrain. We have better hill climb capability, up to 27% with our dual power drivetrain, which we launched, I think, 1.5 years ago. Okay, another exciting announcement since the last time I've met with you guys, we have been working with Michelin to develop the X In-City Energy Z tire, which is a 315 low rolling resistance tire that's optimized specifically for battery electric buses. And essentially this tire allows us yet another improvement in efficiency for the vehicle. Charging, this is a huge development since the last time we've talked. In the early days of Proterra, we built our own overhead charging system. There was no industry standard, so we had to build something. And our earliest product I showed you in 2009, it could only travel 35 miles on a single charge. It had to be recharged en route via an overhead charger because there wasn't plug-in technology for buses at the time. Today, we now are this close to an industry standard for overhead charging, and that's the SAE J30105 standard. The OEMs at the bottom of the screen there on the left-hand side, which are most of the major OEMs in the US, with the exception of BYD, have adopted this standard for overhead charging. And so what's shown here is an inverted pantograph where the charge arm lowers down. It meets 2 rails on top of the bus in the front of the vehicle and enables a rapid charge. It can be used in the depot, but it's mostly used en route to help supplement range while a bus is in service. A bus can be plug-in charge as well. And so any bus we sell can be overhead charge, plug-in charge, or both, some combination of the two. Our plug-in charger also follows the industry standard, the J1772 charger. All the OEMs at the bottom of the screen there use the same standard, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with for plug-in charging. As I mentioned in the beginning, we also manufacture our own chargers. We make a 60, 125, and 500 kW charger. The 60 and 125 are compatible with plug-in charging, and the 500 kW charger is compatible with our overhead inverted pantograph system. And so our E2 bus, which is the 440 kilowatt hour bus, would take about 6 hours to recharge with the 60 kW charger, 3 hours to recharge with the 125, and we can replenish about 30 miles every 10 minutes with the 500 kW charger. One quick note, the power control systems, which are the green and white boxes, those can be located up to 500 feet away from the dispenser. And so transit agencies, their parking situations are often, they're often old facilities and they're very small and cramped. And so it's very helpful that they can locate the PCS. You know, it doesn't have to be right there in the day where they have buses lined up and recharging. Another exciting development since the last time we met is our multi-dispenser charging solution. And so what you see here is 125 kW power control system with 2 dispensers. And so if a transit agency, well, let me back up. We used to offer or recommend basically a 1-to-1 ratio. We said that you needed 1 charger for every bus you have. With multi-dispenser charging, if you have time at the end of, the duty cycle of the bus, that's, assuming that's usually in the middle of the night, early morning, you can use multi-dispenser charging to charge 2 buses. And the reason you would do this is to reduce the upfront infrastructure costs and to lower the space requirements. So you don't have to have 2 PCS two power control systems and two dispensers, you can just have one charger with two dispensers. The caveat here is that it enables sequential charging and not simultaneous charging. So you can't plug in two buses at the same time and charge them both at the same time. You can plug them both in at the same time, but the first bus would charge, and then once it reached 100% state of charge, the second bus would start, and then it would charge. So for our E2 bus, you could charge two buses fully in 6.5 hours. First bus, then the second bus. But that's exciting for us. We can go up to 4 dispensers per 125 kW charger, which doesn't really make sense for transit bus fleets because or universities or airports because they operate pretty much all the time. But for school bus charging, which is a space that Proterra is now in, you could go up to 4 dispensers because they sit idle for so long. I mean, I don't have any slides in here on Proterra powered, but I'm happy to talk to you guys about it. We now sell our battery packs to Thomas Bus, which is I don't know if it's a subsidiary, but it's a Daimler company, and Daimler is now a Proterra investor. We also put our batteries in Alexander Dennis double-decker buses, and in Von Hool motor coach buses as well, and in delivery vans. So we've expanded well beyond the transit market, although transit is still our core business. Okay, this is another exciting update since the last time we've met. We now have an entire team focused on what we call charging at scale. So as we see transit agencies moving away from pilot programs where they're piloting, 5 to 25 buses, depending on the size of the agency, we're seeing full fleet electrification. So in California, for example, they have what's known as the Innovative Clean Transit Rule, or ICT, where all transit buses have to be zero emission by 2040. So they can be fuel cell, but they can also be battery electric. And so you have agencies like LA Metro with thousands of buses, San Diego with 1,000 buses, Orange County Transportation Agency with 1,000 buses. And so we have an entire team devoted to figuring out basically how you recharge that many buses at night or throughout the day. And so what you see here is this is actually at our first customer, Foothill Transit in West Covina, California. This is an overhead charging array where they have the reel and the dispenser. There's someone talking. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself.
I think
If I
it's
could see who it was, I would mute them.
Glenn, if you could mute, or I think Lauren, since you're host, you can click on his little microphone.
The problem is I have my settings where I can only see people who are.
Next slide, please.
Okay.
So Glenn, if you
Okay,
could
very good.
Okay, I know there's some new hands out there. I'm looking at one of them. So
Oh no.
let's see who you identify.
Okay, let me see.
yourself.
Do you have the participants list off to your right? A little.
Yes, but I can only see. I can't see people on the phone. Let me.
Greg, you're a new
He's
hand.
got
So
his
tell us
name.
who you are.
He's not on the
Hey,
phone.
I'm Greg Squire.
What is his name? Glenn.
Glenn Jenkins.
Okay, I muted him.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So what you're seeing is an overhead charging array. I can't remember the number of buses that they charge off of this, but you'll see that they have the dispensers up out of the way. The PCS, the power control units, are located off to the side. So they have buses come in, and the cord and dispenser actually lower down from overhead. We're also working on a really exciting modeling where we take huge fleets like LA Metro and we optimize the number of chargers and the amount of power you need to your facility based on your route profiles out of that system. So you guys may not be familiar with transit buses, but they run very strange schedules. So a bus might start on Route 1 and then change over to Route 4 and then go back to Route 6 and then end on Route 1 again. that's called blocking. And so we use that blocking data to optimize what a charging and energy portfolio looks like for full scale fleet adoption. So that's another exciting advancement. And we're the only company at this time that offers that type of modeling capability. Okay, so a little bit about our batteries. You guys may remember that they're modular and stackable. This is 910 kilowatt hour packs. Stacked is 1 megawatt hour of energy. And so after a battery's useful life in a transit bus, it still has a lot of useful life left. It might have 80% of its initial usable energy. In fact, we just ran a state of health profile on Park City, who runs 70,000 miles per year on their buses. So with 6 buses in 3 years, they've already accumulated over 1.2 million miles on their fleet. And their battery health is still like 92%. And they'll probably end up retiring those buses in 2024 based on mileage. So the point is that when the battery is finished, so to speak, in a transit bus, it still has a lot of useful life in it. And so batteries can be stacked for on-site energy storage. And we're also noticing a lot of interest from utilities and working with transit agencies to finance the batteries, the bus batteries. And then once they come out of the bus, let's say at the midway point, the energy company or utility will take over the ownership of the batteries. Our batteries, we often get a lot of questions, people who want to poke holes, I'm sure you're familiar with this, poke holes in electrification. They say, well, what about the battery when you're done with it? You know, doesn't it just become hazardous waste or something? No, so the aluminum that's used in our pack is 100% recyclable. And instead of sending our batteries away, we work with recycling companies and recycle 99% of the precious metals used in the battery. So that's something else that we're proud of. Okay, this is my final slide, and then I want to open up for questions. So this has been a really challenging time for public transportation. You know, our business is mass transit. Transit makes sense in communities where there are a lot of people. You know, transit works on density. And so, you know, it's no surprise that we've seen COVID-19 outbreaks in New York City and in Seattle and places where there's a lot of density and therefore a lot of transit use. And so sadly, just last week, the CDC came out with new guidance where they encouraged people to commute alone by car. And so the transit industry responded in unison with a letter from the American Public Transportation Association saying that this guidance is misguided and really goes against everything we're trying to accomplish with public transportation in terms of squeezing as many people as we possibly can into one vehicle, taking cars off the road, reducing pollution, and also really just ignores the fact that some people do not have access to a car. And so instead of that, you know, following the CDC guidance, we've recommended that businesses stagger their employees, so don't have everyone report at 8 a.m., so not everyone's on the 7:30 a.m. train together or on the bus together. Stagger not only the return to the workplace, but also the hours that people are at work and maybe the days that people are at work. Continue to encourage telecommuting. In terms of what transit agencies are doing, transit agencies received $25 million from the CARES Act to support loss in revenue and additional expenses for cleaning buses. And so transit agencies, as you know, they're heavily subsidized, but they also collect billions of dollars in fare revenue every year. Many transit agencies have stopped collecting fares right now in an effort to limit interaction between the operator and customers, the exchange of money. You know, money is dirty. Yes, a lot of systems, including Houston, have a, you know, touchless system where they just tap a card. But transit agencies are, including Houston, are doing rear door boarding where passengers aren't coming through the front of the bus. They're boarding the bus through the back door, again, to limit that interaction. But this is, they're not collecting fares, so they're losing out on that revenue. Some of the other measures, including, more cleaning of the vehicles, they're adding more buses and trains to service so that they can limit the number of people. Let's say where they used to have one bus, now they have two coming. Increasing the frequency of service to limit the number of people on vehicles, and encouraging social distancing. So I don't know how many of you have been on a Houston Metro bus, but they have signs on about every fourth or fifth seat that say, please don't sit here, in order to respect social distancing. So I think, in the long term, public transportation is not going anywhere. It's an interesting time, though, to encourage, 40 people to get on a bus together. But I think the transit community has done a really good job of coming up with ideas and methods for spacing people out on vehicles. And several different transit agencies are commissioning studies right now to look at airflow on transit buses to determine how viruses like COVID-19 and others might spread. So that's not specifically related to battery electric buses, but I know I had at least one person really interested in public transportation in the era of COVID-19. So I will stop there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That was definitely good to cover that, because I'm sure folks are wondering with regards to the virus going around. So yeah, as you say, not directly related to electric buses, but just buses in general. All right, so folks, you have questions?
Yes, you mentioned aluminum in the batteries. I thought the batteries themselves were basically lithium. Can you comment on that?
Sure, that is the casing around the actual cells and modules and packs.
Okay, so what do you do with the lithium when they are finally at the end of their useful life?
The lithium in the batteries?
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, and our first customer, Foothill Transit, who deployed in 2010, they're still using their original batteries. So battery packs. So we don't have, in all of our deployments, we have, I think, almost 400 vehicles on the road. We don't have a single customer who has disposed of their battery packs yet. But as I mentioned, since there's still so much usable energy, the idea is that the transit agency would either keep those battery packs and continue to use them for on-site storage, sell them to their utility. Beyond that, once the battery pack is depleted, down to absolutely nothing, I'm not sure what happens to the lithium, but I can find out.
That would be good. Thank you very much.
At the true end of life. Sure.
Hi, Lauren, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, so on some electric vehicles, namely, I guess the Nissan Leaf, there was an idea to be able to plug up the car to a camper or a house to power it in case of like an outage or something. If a municipality or city is in a natural disaster scenario, would they be able to use the power stored in the batteries for an emergency situation?
Yes. And so the reason I went back to this slide is very small print on the bottom. It says V2G, which is vehicle to grid. So we do have bi-directional capability where you could use the buses as basically little generators, not little generators, big generators.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Capabilities in there. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, on the V2G, is there an inverter in the unit, or does the DC voltage feed an inverter for AC power? Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that question. but I'm writing it down. And I'll
It might-
follow up.
Might depend on how prepared an agency would want to be. If they're really expecting the bus to need to drive off somewhere and power something, you'd want the inverter in it. Of course, for daily use, that would be more equipment to drive around with and more weight. And so you'd probably want it off board at some location where you might want to power some equipment or something off of a bus. Yeah. So it could be either, I would guess. All right. So more questions? Okay.
Is there any thought for certain fleets to have swappable battery packs, or is the range is getting better and better to the point where they won't ever really need that?
Yeah, so the only time we would swap out a pack purposefully is at once the pack has depleted below 80% of its initial usable energy. We would swap out the pack so that the bus maintains its initial efficiency. So we would swap it out with a new pack. And the transit agency would be responsible for paying for that unless they had a battery lease agreement. But in terms of like doing a quick swap out in the middle of the day, like to supplement range, no, that's not something that we've explored.
Okay.
And the reason is because of your point, because we've with plug-in charging and our new cell technology, we're able to achieve essentially the range of a conventionally powered transit bus. And so the need really isn't there right now.
Gotcha. So I guess in the next 10, 15 years or however long the battery pack maintains its efficiency, if a new technology comes out, such as solid state graphene batteries, the casing that the battery fits in, it could just have the new technology in it. It will just fit in the same compartment.
Correct. Yep, that's the idea.
Okay.
Okay. Folks, you can always speak up again if you have more live questions. I do see there are some in the chat, and then we have the written ones from Robert. Lauren, can you see the Zoom group chat?
Let's see here. Let me stop sharing so I can see the chat. Okay, I can see the chat now.
Okay. So
let's see.
Going down from the top.
Is there a cost of ownership study versus diesel buses? Yes. So that's something that we offer at no cost to transit agencies. We take their maintenance cost per mile, the cost of their diesel, natural gas, or hybrid bus, what they're currently paying for fuel. We look at the cost of obviously the battery electric bus, the charging infrastructure. We even include the cost of the battery replacement at the 6-year mark. And then we have a model that yields the 12-year total cost of ownership analysis since a transit bus stays in operation for 12 years or 500,000 miles. In all of the total cost of ownership analysis I've run, I have never seen a single analysis come out where diesel, natural gas, or hybrid is cheaper than an electric bus, even though an electric bus is more expensive from an upfront capital cost perspective. And so most of the savings comes in fuel and in maintenance. There are certain utilities, like in places you wouldn't even expect. In Kansas, for example, Westar, who became Evergy, passed a new rate for transit agencies using electricity as a fuel for transit buses. They pay 2 cents a kilowatt hour. When you put that into a model, even with the diesel prices we're seeing today, electric comes out ahead every time. Our bus also doesn't have an engine. You aren't doing oil changes. We have regen braking. It has 30% fewer parts. When you look at the moving pieces on an electric bus versus a diesel bus, at first, I mean, this is human nature, but this definitely holds true with diesel mechanics. They do not like to learn anything new. So when I first talked to a transit agency about electric buses, I know that it's the director of maintenance and the mechanics who are going to have the most heartache about switching. As soon as they see the bus and we open up, you know, what would be the engine compartment, and there's nothing there, there's just two cabinets with some high voltage wires that are orange, which we all know means like don't touch. They're on board, and really at most systems where we've deployed electric buses, the mechanics become the biggest fans. So yes, we do offer total cost of ownership or life cycle cost analysis, which is one of the questions I got in the chat. Is overhead charging done en route or while parked? It can be either or both. It really just depends. If you need to supplement range while you're en route, then you would want, let's say you have a route that's 23 hours a day and 300 miles. You simply don't have time to bring that bus back at the end of the day and plug it in to recharge. So you would have to leverage en route charging in that situation. And we do have some customers who have, you know, really heavy duty cycles like that, where the bus is out there for 23 hours a day. So that's really the main factor we look at when we're making a charging solution recommendation. I'm looking at hours and miles. Like, do you have the time available at the end of the day to plug in? If the answer is no, then you probably need to use en route charging. But we have some customers who use, overhead charging. We have some customers who use overhead charging at their depot, back at the bus garage, and that's just their preferred method of recharging. You know, maybe they don't want any operator intervention. They don't want operators plugging in buses. Maybe it's a union issue or something. So we have transit agencies leverage overhead infrastructure in those situations too. Let's see, what other questions are in the chat? Okay, 700,000 average price, federal subsidies. How much do local transit agencies have to come up with the difference through taxes or bond issuance? Okay, so most transit buses are 80% federally funded. And so that means the transit agency has to come up with 20% local share. And the local share is made up of, in Houston, for example, we have a dedicated sales tax base that goes to public transit. Now, that's like nothing right now in COVID, but that's what every transit agency is facing, because no one is spending any money. You know, that sales tax generation isn't there. But it also comes through fare box recovery revenue. In some cities where the transit agency is involved in HOV, HOT lanes, like in Houston, there can be revenue streams there. They come from advertising, etc. But it's usually 80-20 on the bus. There are some federal programs like the Federal Transit Administration Low-No program, which is specifically for low or no emission vehicles. They cover 85% of the bus cost and 90% of the infrastructure cost, meaning that the transit agency has to come up with 15% local share for the bus and 10% for the charger. Another really a new and exciting form of local share is the VW settlement funds, which you know, they're divvied up a little differently in every state, but most states have a set aside for transit and school buses. And so we've seen a lot of transit agencies use their VW settlement funds for battery electric bus purchases. Is Proterra working with any school bus suppliers? Yes, we're working with Thomas School Bus. They had an electric pub tour last year. That sounds fun, which included someone from Proterra. Oh yeah, okay, that was in Dallas. Whoever said this, that was James. Yes, Proterra sponsored that. I think we used a Dallas Dart bus to do the tour in Dallas last year. Good memory. It wasn't me. I think it was our founder, Dale Hill. I think he was there. I can't remember.
Maybe you want to push for electric pub tour in Houston, then you could take part.
Well, if we had some electric buses, I would. Okay, plans for school buses, long-range coaches, or similar tour vans. Yes. Okay. So our batteries do go into Thomas school buses. Again, we don't make the vehicle. We just supply the battery pack. And then coaches, we put our batteries into Von Hool motor coaches, which are the high floor over the road coaches that are typically used in commuter service. They have the fancier seats, you know, the high back seats with fabric, and, you know, you have to step up to board the vehicle. Also into Alexander Dennis double deck buses. And then we also put them in, we just announced that we are putting our batteries into delivery vans. And we're also working on a smaller vehicle, like a cutaway style vehicle, typically used in smaller rural communities that don't, you know, have a need for a 35 or 40-foot bus, and also used in paratransit service, which is transit service for people with disabilities. I think I've responded to all of the chat questions.
Okay, great. I think Kevin has a question. Kevin?
Hi, Lauren. This is Kevin Douglas. I wanted to ask you if you had any guidance for us as both residents of the city and also, you know, the Houston Electric Auto Association or any other organizations on how we can drive the conversation with Houston Metro specifically towards maybe helping them understand that the public wants electric transportation. Do you have any suggestions on specific people to meet with or specific ways to go about doing that?
Yeah, so you guys know I used to work there, and so I'll give you my official guidance when I'm not on Zoom and not being recorded, so we can always talk offline. But I would say that, you know, Houston Metro has a public board meeting every month. They take public comments. I know you guys have come and presented in the past. I think you perhaps even prepared a letter, maybe with some signatures at one point. Your continued dialogue with the agency is what's important. The current chairwoman, I believe her term is ending soon, although it could be extended. It's at the mayor's discretion. But I think that, just being perfectly honest, you know, her legacy was the referendum that was passed. And so I don't really know if there is that desire there to lead or to leave her mark by bringing electric buses on board. But a new chairperson who's coming on, you know, without any big projects in their name could be really interested. So it's not to say that the current board makeup isn't interested. I think you should continue to engage with them through public comment, because they really do pay attention to people who come to the meetings and speak up. But also, I would recommend that the association band together with other groups in the community, so that Metro sees that this is what the community wants. I think about it this way. The industry started moving towards compressed natural gas for buses like 15 years ago. Metro just put 50 natural gas buses in their fleet in like 2016. So they're really sort of lagging. They're a lagging transit agency in terms of vehicle technology adoption. So it doesn't surprise me from that standpoint that Houston Metro is like the only large transit agency. When I go through the list of the top 20 transit agencies in the United States, I don't think there's another, maybe even 50. I don't think there's another transit agency on there that hasn't even dipped their toe into electrification, and Houston Metro hasn't. And I think that's part of the conversation, because they have to start somewhere. They have 1,200 buses in their fleet. They've replaced 100 buses a year. You know, why not make 10 or 20 of those electric? So again, we can talk more offline, but that would be my initial guidance.
Thanks, Lauren. I will give you some kind of somehow we'd like to get with you and have this conversation, because
sure.
I think that we need to have a continued effort, like you said. And with the city and the climate action plan that was just announced and is moving forward, and the mayor's leadership and capability to influence the board, the Metro board, I think that maybe this is a good time to, I mean, COVID is making it difficult because it pushes a lot of things down they're very busy with other things, but as this passes, to kind of set the ground, open up the conversations again, so that when things start being talked about, maybe there's an end on it.
Yeah, I agree. And the climate action plan is a great, I think that's a great place to start a dialogue with the mayor. And he really has tremendous influence over the board in a way, because he appoints 5 of the 9 members, including the chairperson. But he doesn't in another way, because the mayor has just never really been involved in public transit the way mayors are in other cities. So he does care, but he's not kind of down in the policy decisions. But that doesn't mean that can't change. It also doesn't mean that the mayor isn't looking for something else to hang his hat on, in this new term. So I like the idea, and however I can support, please let me know, and I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, Jacob.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah. Has there ever been any interest from the Walt Disney Company? Because I think they run on biodiesel for a lot of their fleet. But I have been there recently, and their buses are a little bit dated now. But
so I specifically, I am most familiar with our transit customers, but we do have a commercial entity who, and my counterpart deals with airports, universities, and companies like Walt Disney, Facebook, Google, who have huge campuses and need for transporting all those people. I know that we have done demonstrations with Walt Disney in the past, but I don't know where we are in terms of our conversations with them. And I know that they're not a customer, but I know we have engaged. I know there's interest there.
Okay. But for a large company or I guess municipality, is it kind of like, is there like bulk pricing where the more they buy, the cheaper it is, or is it kind of set MSRP?
Everything's negotiable, Jacob.
Okay.
Yeah, for a really large order, it depends too. Most of our procurements are competitive procurement, where we have to respond to a request for proposal. And so when there is a large of order, we are able to, again, leverage economies of scale and reduce the price of the vehicle. If some agencies buy off of a purchasing schedule, and that's a fixed price, but then they don't have to go through the RFP process. But generally speaking, everything is negotiable.
Okay, more live questions?
Yeah, Lauren, go back to the cost analysis between diesel and electric on a long-term basis. On the average, I've heard that the electrics are outshine the diesel by a huge amount. What, on the average, is your understanding of the difference between the two?
Yeah, great question. So using sort of national averages for the purchase price of a diesel bus, a natural gas bus, and a hybrid bus, and then also using national averages for fuel and maintenance costs. We estimate about a $400,000 savings per bus over its 12-year life versus diesel, about a $400,000 savings versus natural gas, and about a $200,000 savings versus hybrid.
Thank you.
So one of the questions
Per
bus, yeah.
One of the questions Robert had written about in advance had talked about the tons of CO2 and particulate matter that electric buses save? Do you have some words on that?
Sure, yeah. I think I have that in one of my first slides. So that's part of the total cost of ownership analysis. Our final slide in that presentation looks at emissions reduction. And so I can't really quote an average because it's really dependent on the type of fuel that they were using before and the number of miles that they drive per year. So what was in my slide presentation is the total amount of GHG emissions that our fleet has reduced over the past 10 years. But it's really a tailored analysis and it depends on the fleet.
Okay, that's great. That's.
But I will share this. I can't remember. I think it was Sierra Club did a study for Houston Metro and looked specifically at that question. They did their own total cost of ownership analysis, but they also, not surprisingly, focused on emissions reduction. They looked at NOx, CO2, particulate matter versus the diesel buses in Metro's fleet and the natural gas buses. And obviously the electric buses, smoked everybody else. That's probably the wrong word. We're much cleaner. We're much cleaner than all the other fuels. So I will look for that study. I know it's online and I'll send it to the group and make sure that you guys get your hands on it. And I think that you should, the Houston Metro board receives so much information at all of their monthly meetings. They probably forgot that study was even conducted. So I would encourage you to pull some of the nuggets from that study and politely remind them that this was done and what the opportunity is not only for cost savings but for emission savings too.
Yeah, because for some folks the cost, even a higher cost, there's something they'd be willing to pay in order to have cleaner air in their city. But obviously it's good that we're now at the point that both on the cost and the cleaner air aspects, electric buses shine. Good. So, and I think I'd ask you for the charts after the meeting. So yeah, if they're available, then we will post them on the site.
Okay. I might have to remove 1 or 2 slides, but other than that, I will share them with you.
Yeah, only what you feel comfortable with, going out.
Okay. Yep, we'll do.
Yeah, we appreciate you talking to us in even more detail than what might want to go in writing, because yeah, nobody can control when something's in writing where it goes to. But yeah, it's always good to get the inside scoop, and I'm glad that things have advanced so far. With Houston being so far behind, I guess maybe I extrapolated that a lot of other cities would be in the same situation. It's really good to hear that there are so many other cities that are moving forward with electric buses.
Yeah, I mean, name a city. Cities you wouldn't even think of, like Topeka, Kansas. Like, who would think that Topeka would be? Wichita is a customer. The Cherokee Nation, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like, come on, Houston.
Yeah, when I was in Denver, as I mentioned back in August, yeah, they had recently switched their circulator bus, which keeps going around and around downtown, to electric. I think they had started that system earlier before electrics were really available. But that makes sense because that bus is just right in the center of town all day long. And yeah, starting.
Yeah, they operate on the 16th Street Mall. And Denver RTD is also doing a fleet electrification planning process. And they have a special rate also from Xcel Energy, their utility, to charge their buses because they were facing demand charges, trying to charge in the middle of the day. But there are so many, and I feel like in Houston, of all places, every energy company, I feel like, would be chomping at the bit to have Houston Metro electrify their fleet. Like, it's a new and significant revenue stream for electric companies. So that can't be overlooked. Maybe that's another angle that you play with the mayor's office and with Metro.
That's a good point, yeah. And thinking of other vehicles that start and stop a lot like buses do, and you mentioned that your battery packs go into school buses. Do you have any connections with builders of garbage trucks that start and stop a lot and are obviously in urban areas?
Probably. So we have I'm on the transit team. We have a team called Proterra Powered, and they meet with, all sorts of different heavy duty platform companies to look at, other markets where we can put our batteries in. So I have heard conversations about refuse, but I don't think that we don't have any established agreements at this point, but I know it's something that we've explored.
Because I know there's a lot of people that would like to see those vehicles electrified in the same way that hopefully the post office delivery vehicles will get electrified.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. More live questions from folks. I see a comment in the chat about Houston Climate Action Plan. Okay.
Yes, I think we talked about that. Is this $400,000 savings separate from the pollution savings? Yes. So we do not monetize the pollution savings, although you could.
Yeah, and that's going to be different value for all different players. Unfortunately, some probably put zero value on it. But,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is there any concern with grid capacity if a whole fleet of buses charges all at once at night?
Maybe.
Maybe.
It really depends. It depends on where you are. But the good news is most buses don't all charge at the same time. They're coming, because remember I said like a bus could be on Route 1, then Route 4, then Route 6. Buses, oftentimes they go out and they stay out all day, but they're not all coming in at the same time every night because you have so many different duty cycles and so many different block schedules. And so part of our modeling software is to do just that, to look at when buses are recharging and what the actual energy need is. And we involve utilities in this discussion. And the output is so that the transit agency can take our modeling data and go to their utility and determine the path forward. So if I can pull up this presentation, and now that I mentioned it, I probably can't, but we did this study for LA Metro, and we go ahead.
Comment from somebody? Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. We did a study for LA Metro, and we looked at 2 of their different bus garages. They have about 300 buses, I think, at each garage, but just focused on one. If we just did one charger per bus and we charged them all at the same time, I think they needed like 30 megawatts of power. And after we finished our modeling and we added in solar, we determined that they only needed 8. So that's why, and that's part of the problem with Houston Metro and their approach to this is that they've done this initial modeling and they are scared at the numbers they see in terms of the energy required to repower, 1,200 buses, although they're spread over 7 different fleets. But in terms of the grid capacity, their preliminary results are pretty scary, but they haven't optimized the system yet through modeling. And so we've talked to them actually about our modeling capabilities, and they're interested in learning more about, how they can optimize their charging and ultimately energy consumption. So that was a really long-winded answer, but yeah, I mean, yes, it is. It's a concern.
Yeah. Like the current fleet size for Houston, is that like 200 buses or something like that, or
1,200.
1,200 buses. Wow. And each bus has 450 kilowatts of storage.
So the average is 440, but we go up to 660. But remember, when a bus comes back at the end of the day, it's not necessarily totally depleted. It could be at 40%. It could be at 60%. The modeling factors in all of that. It also factors in when that bus needs to go back out. So we prioritize which buses need to be charged first based on when it needs to go back into service. It's really amazing. Maybe that is a separate presentation for another day. But the idea is that a bus would come back, and eventually, if we ever get to automation, that bus would, let's say, like, go to charger 3, and that charger 3 knows, like, okay, I need to start charging this bus now, or I don't have to charge this bus till 2 a.m. But that is what the future looks like. The process of yard management and recharging all these buses, the idea is that we move towards automation for all of it. I never said driverless. I just said automated.
Yeah, because just doing a little quick math at 1,200 buses, that's like 540 megawatts of battery capacity. That is huge.
Yeah, it's crazy. But again, not all buses are in service, right? Transit agencies maintain about a 20% spare ratio. So at any given point in time, 20% of the buses are not in service. They're being worked on, they have accident damage, preventive maintenance, whatever the case may be. They're out for training. But with the rest of the buses, and they're spread amongst multiple facilities, yes, you're talking about a lot of energy, but again, it's spaced over. The idea that you would come back and plug in all your buses at once is foolish. That's never going to happen. And so that's why the modeling and the automation becomes so important.
Would it make sense for the transportation system to just have like their own solar farm just for the buses?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Another really important consideration for Houston Metro, because their buses are all parked outside under canopies. They park them under canopies because it's so hot here, and all buses, have to meet what's called the Houston pull down standard, where they go from over like 104 degrees. They have to be cooled down to 72 degrees, plus or minus 3 degrees in 30 minutes. Part of the way that the HVAC system can achieve that standard, but they park them under canopies to help reduce the direct heat onto the buses. But my point is, those canopies, that structure is already in place. And so could they leverage that to put solar in their yard? Probably. And that could help offset some of the power too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You hit on something, Lauren, that always gets me. If I drive toward an airport and I see all these parking areas with covered parking, I think, it would hardly cost them any different if they were to just use solar panels as the material to build those out of, the upper part. Why not do that? But, a lot of folks aren't forward thinking. That always gets me, So any more questions for Lauren, and we'll wrap up with her? This has all been great. You just barely hit on the autonomous part, but I think that we'll all be able to read more developments in that area.
I'll just simply touch and say that we started a project with University of Nevada, Reno on connected vehicle capabilities. The second part of that project was automation, and the second part was not funded. So we are currently in a process of exploring suppliers. Proterra's approach is that we think that this is in our, some level of automation is in our future product roadmap. We don't know when, and we know that that's not our area of expertise, and so that's not something we want to do in-house. So our plan is to work with a supplier, like a Waymo, like it used to be Drive AI. I think they were acquired by Google or something, like an Easy Mile, someone who already has that platform suite, and to integrate their platform into our electric bus. So that's sort of the overarching approach to automation. In terms of what's going on in the transit world in automation, AECOM, the design and engineering firm, has formulated the Automated Bus Consortium, ABC, They have 12 to 13 member agencies that have joined, and their goal is to leverage their collective purchasing power and buy between 100 and 150 level 4 automated full-size transit buses. So an RFP for this is supposed to come out later this year. The unique thing about this project is that they're mandating that the buses are electric. So that's exciting that they're starting with the premise that, you know, any research and development funds that are pooled and put into this large solicitation for an automated bus, you know, they have to be electric. So that's exciting. There are some small shuttle type projects going on in transit. On the big bus side, Pierce Transit in Washington, I think they're doing an automatic emergency braking study on a full-size transit bus. It's not an electric bus. We will get there. We know it's in the future. And like I said earlier, you know, we are not as interested in driverless technology. We're more interested in opportunities to improve efficiency. You know, one of the biggest factors for efficiency on our bus is actually the driver. I mean, we can have like a 20% change in efficiency based on how they drive the bus. And so if we were able to control braking and acceleration through automation, you know, we could have huge efficiency improvements, and we're obviously interested in safety improvements. So not so much to focus on the removal of the driver at any point, but that's something transit agencies are interested in because labor is the largest line item in their operating budget, maybe right after diesel fuel. So more to come on the automated bus front.
Good, good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I always tend to think of, yeah, if you do things with automation, if it's not an electrified bus, do you have to worry about people being asphyxiated? We hear every year about people in their cars and garages, you know, dying from the exhaust gases and things like that. So yeah, anytime that a bus might have some automation, if it wasn't all electric, the first fear I have is that, you know, who might potentially get asphyxiated being in a close proximity to a tailpipe. All right, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Laura. So,
okay, you're so welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me back. I really enjoyed meeting with your group, and I owe you a few follow-up items, so I'll be in touch.
All right, sounds good.
I'm going to eat dinner. Bye.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Lauren.
Oh, do I need to, are you the host again? Are we good?
I took host back again, yes.
Okay, all right. Be well, wash your hands. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. All right, folks. So that was good. Thanks for all the good questions out there. And so let's see about this poll. Aha, it looks like 20 folks have voted, and not sure if there's a way I can show this easily, but I can quickly go over, I'll start with the second question. Are you interested in an electric pickup truck? We got a 60% yes on that, 40% no. And in terms of the folks who responded, of course, it's a very unscientific poll of all of our members and such, but I've got 45% who say they drive an EV, 25% have 2 or more EVs in their household, 15% say they don't have an EV, and 15% say they don't have an EV but plan to get one in the next year. So that's an interesting little cross-section of folks and things that are on their minds. And so let's hear any comments that folks have relative to those kinds of numbers on the poll. So owning an EV and being interested in an electric pickup truck.
Yeah, what I kind of noticed, at least with Texans, is a lot of the trucks or a lot of the cars are trucks. We have a lot of blue collar oriented people, or just people who just want to be able to move things. Unfortunately, the big issue with trucks is that they're usually empty and they're really big, and people really like to go fast in them because I imagine they're only getting like 12 gallons or or 12 miles per gallon.
Yeah, that
So,
could well be. Yeah, the bigger thing is, and the faster it goes, the more energy it takes. As a lot of us always say to people, if you want more range, just slow down 5 miles per hour because that's what's going to give you the most additional range if you need to make a certain destination before you can have a practical way to recharge. Yeah, when you get to the really big, huge vehicles, although one of the comments I've got a note here about is that GM has reiterated that they are going to make an electric Hummer, which if it's anything like the old H1, H2, H3, they got smaller with the H3, but still those were pretty big vehicles. So they must be planning on putting a lot of batteries in those in order to make something big. And then the news we've heard that Elon was talking about reducing the size from the design of the one prototype of the Cybertruck by either 5% or 3%. And then he backtracked and said, nope, it's going to be the size that the prototype is, which I guess kind of just barely fits in a typical garage. But that's relatively sizable. Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw the interview with Jay Leno, and he said like 20% reduction.
I think in that interview that number was thrown out, but from Elon, I've only ever seen him talk about. At one point he said 5%, and then another point he said 3% reduction, and the most recent thing is that it will stay the size of a prototype. The additional bit of information that was then stated by him is that perhaps later he'll come out with a world truck that's smaller in size. So in my mind, that made me think of going from what's typically called a full-size pickup to something that's a Ford Ranger or a Colorado or something that's a smaller size pickup. Because as we know, in the gasoline pickup market, there are different sizes to meet different needs. Yeah, as you say, on the freeways, you see a lot of the big pickups. In my mind, folks may find that there are things that they never knew they needed, such as when electrified pickup trucks can bring power to a work site. You got to go out to a fence post and drill some holes in it or something, and you've got power there, or actually go drill some post holes if you have electric post hole jigger. So I'm thinking that folks will find advantages of electrification. I remember we had a speaker from Centerpoint, and when they first had a pilot pickup truck that was not a pickup truck, service truck that was electrified, they're afraid that none of the line workers were going to want to use that one because they're all used to using a truck. What the speaker said was they found just the opposite. They all liked it, and the main driver was they no longer needed to idle the engine and then yell over the engine from the guy up in the bucket at the top of the pole to the guy on the ground, manipulating equipment or whatever. And so that it ended up being that all the linemen liked the electrified service truck. So it was just one they had as a prototype. I don't know if it stayed there or went somewhere else, but so sometimes people find that there's things that they don't know they need or can take advantage of until they actually have them and start using them.
Dave, it was a HEAA Motors truck is what he brought.
You're kind of fading away there, Jacob.
That was Kevin. It was a HEAA Motors truck.
What I was mentioning was that the Rivian has the air compressor.
You're still breaking up there, Jacob. Now I see you're muted. You're switching mics or something. Yeah, Kevin, we heard you. You were a little bit faint, but did hear the comments that you made right before Jacob then was giving a response. So that's good that you remember, Kevin, because I couldn't remember the details, what vehicle that was. Do you know if it stayed in the fleet, the service fleet that they had, or did it need to go back or anything like that, Kevin?
You know, I don't know if they still have. They had 2 VIA Motors trucks, and I think they were leases. So I don't know if they still have them. They had issues with the vehicle, getting some not not the electric drive stuff fixed, but basic standard GM stuff. The dealers were not trained to work on that particular vehicle, and they were having a hard time getting some things worked on the vehicle. So I don't know though. We could ask Mike McCabe next time somebody talks to him.
Okay, yeah. I mean, anytime there's a pilot program, there's, different restrictions. Maybe you might like to continue using a vehicle, but might need to go back, or it's not sturdy enough because it was just a modified standard vehicle or some other criteria that means you have to switch out. But okay.
Now with pickup trucks, they don't necessarily have like a weight limit requirement, like semis do, because of course weight will cause wear and tear on the highway, and they have to pay like a toll or some sort of tax for that. Wouldn't you agree that the battery weight on like a semi truck kind of limits the cargo potential on a semi?
I've kind of wondered that myself. Yeah, the semi is obviously much, much heavier than even a large size pickup truck. And one of the interesting things that I saw in the report on Tesla doing a pilot with the Tesla semi was that they had set it up with 5, I believe it was 100 kilowatt hour battery packs, and they would go to a supercharger and plug into 5 separate outlets to charge the cab of their semi, 5 batteries all at once. So obviously they're going on to the weight issue. That's obviously 5 times the weight of the battery in the largest size Model S or Model X. So yeah, those would be considerations, but I don't know how much weight the trailer would be compared to the cab in terms of the whole overall weight reaching or exceeding the limit.
Yeah, I'm guessing even if it is you're losing a little bit of weight capacity, you're making it up in fuel economy and just overall maintenance and reliability.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because there's also like talks, because I think most of our lithium comes from brine pools in South America.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of raises the question is, should the future of American transportation rely on another country's precious metals, or should America go towards more of like a hydrogen fuel system, because as the fuel is burnt, the vehicle gets lighter, such as the case in semi trucks or in air.
Kevin, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that actually, I don't think most of the lithium comes from South America. Those are large sources of lithium, but lithium mines are prevalent throughout the globe, and lithium is also not the largest component of the batteries. I know that Ken asked about the lithium, but the cells themselves are primarily copper, aluminum, and then they have additional paste painted on the copper and aluminum plates or rolls of cobalt, manganese, and then lithium oxides. So lithium is not, probably of all the elements, the big one that they're trying to reduce is cobalt, because the Democratic Republic of Congo has something like 50-something%. There was an article in the current events about it in April, where the different metals are sourced. So I think that cell materials are not so much an issue from the standpoint of being subject to another one local region other than cobalt. As a matter of fact, there's a pretty big project just starting up out of the Salton Sea where they're going to mine lithium out of the Salton Sea in California. So it's pretty prevalent. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I've also heard about that source of lithium. Plus, something I just read the other day, there's a company that wants to start a lithium mine, a hard rock mine, just northeast of Tesla's Nevada location, just literally, a couple dozen miles or something away. And somebody speculated, well, maybe Tesla would like to buy that company. In the business world, I think that, the economics usually would outweigh, even if you could get a close source, if you can get it a lot cheaper somewhere else, you might go with the cheaper one because you're trying to produce a product that you've got to compete against your competitors selling. But yes, there's certainly strategic aspects for any country as far as getting raw materials.
Now, I guess I was just kind of, brainstorming a bit on the electric bus fleet for Houston. We see like a lot of large-scale utility grade battery storage like in Australia. Theoretically, if the fleet was not in operation during the nighttime hours, could the fleet be used as emergency power or just for high demand usage at night or of something of that nature?
Yeah, that would really be interesting. As Lauren mentioned, also batteries that are no longer quite good enough for buses, but could be used in ground stations. You mentioned Australia. It was interesting. Some folks may have heard me mention this before. We had an HREG, Houston Renewable Energy Group meeting a number of months back, and the speaker was a gentleman from a title company. And I thought that was rather strange, having someone from that profession come speak to the Renewable Energy Group. But what he said was really very interesting. He said that there's a large number of investors that want to buy an acre or two right next to any substation that has available land next to it. And it's because the batteries have come down in price such that it's now profitable to arbitrage the electricity and put a set of batteries next to an electrical substation. And basically, the old saw about buy low and sell high. And so that is come to fruition now. People are saying that's a business that they could make profitable. Now, of course, in the case of charging buses, you're worried about drawing a whole lot at one point in time. People looking at the electrical flow and looking at it as a business say, hey, that's a business opportunity if there's going to be a big draw all of a sudden during certain hours.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Do you think there are any mechanical advantages to mechanical storage, such as pumped water or gravity hoists of that nature versus batteries? Or
well, for Houston, pump storage wouldn't be very practical. I know of one place personally in Michigan where they use pump storage and they use it to balance out demand at different times on the grid. And I know there's other places around the country and around the world that do that as well. And others have looked at using compressed air underground. And of course, hydro plants for a long time, as much as the fish may not like, they flow more or less water through depending on when there's more demand for electricity. Since hydropower plants been put on rivers. So yeah, it depends on your geography. If you've got, good flow of a river, or if you've got elevation differences and things like that. Batteries can pretty much be put anywhere. Yeah, I thought that was great when Elon did that for Australia and helped improve the grid in the rural areas of Australia.
There's a note here from Tim Whipple.
Yeah, that would be very interesting because if you go down to Pearland or somewhere down there, you'll see, or at least I remember seeing as a kid, fields like the pumps could have just large battery boxes that are just buying and selling electricity automatically.
Yeah. So in the comments, I see a note that says, Tim Whipple here. I would like to attend your Zoom meetings. How do I sign up? So going to the HEAA.org website for each meeting, you can go to the event information and there'll be a location there to sign in and get a link that gets you. So that's the place to start. Facebook is another way to go about it, as Colin wrote on there as well. Okay, more.
Get it on the email list.
Yes, and you can just send one of us an email and say through either of those sites, ask to be put on the monthly list, which goes out and tells everybody about things that we have going on. Yeah, unfortunately, things like what we had worked before with Steve Hanrahan about over there at Evelyn's Park, all those things have been put on hold just due to the social distancing being required. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to pick those things back up again. So one other thing I was going to mention to some folks is that in the latest issue of Motor Trend, the July 2020 issue, those car magazines always seem to come out about a month before the beginning of the next month. There's an article on cars, EVs, that are expected to come out for the 2021 year from a whole slew of different manufacturers. So I don't know, I could see it online because I have subscription, or whether that article is available, but if you can go and try to look and we can see what we can do. It really is very interesting, and it's really a whole slew of cars. It's really good to see all these EVs coming from all these different manufacturers. VW has got something first just for Europe, but then they're going to make cars for all the different markets, including the US, and all the different pickup trucks that are proposed from a number of different companies. So it's really, really an exciting time, all the different vehicles that are coming out. And one other thing that we didn't mention with Lauren, but I thought was also interesting in the news, is that in Sweden, they're doing further tests on transferring power to electric vehicles while they're moving down the road. So I know that's not Lauren's bailiwick, so I didn't bring that up during her talk. But I thought that also could be a future for high-use vehicles, whether it's trucks or buses carrying people or whatever, that certain sections of road could be modified such that they could inductively transfer power to the vehicle, such that you wouldn't have downtime of the vehicle standing still, and still you'd be able to have a smaller battery than if you try to build the vehicle such that it would be standalone all the time it needs to run up until you can park it. That if you can actually add some power transfer capabilities, that you'd be able to go with a smaller battery and therefore obviously a lower cost vehicle. That would maybe drive uses of electric vehicles in situations where they haven't fit the need yet. So I thought that was pretty exciting to read about the new Swedish trials on that. I read about some quite a while back, but there's some new ones. So any other news or projects that folks would like to talk about today?
Hey, Dave, I don't
Yeah.
know if it was announced, but the 200 mile an hour four-wheel vehicle record was broken by Steve Huff, and he's out of the Seattle area, and he ran 2:01:33 or something like that. Down in Tucson. He did it this last month. So somebody's gone over 200 miles an hour in the quarter mile. Next goal is to go down into the sixes. So John Metric is still working on his motor controller. He's made some good progress and should be track testing the vehicle, the car, this whenever tracks get open. So that's on the dragster front.
Great. Yeah. Glad to hear it.
I had mentioned to Bill, because I went to his solo seminar again a few days ago, that I'm working on a range extender for my Nissan Leaf, and I've essentially got all the parts for it. I'm just laying out the battery configuration to fit in the trunk. Possibility of electrical contact with the body of the vehicle. So my plan would be to cut out a piece of plywood and apply either a pond liner or using steel. What's opinions or thoughts on that?
You faded out a little bit at the very end. So I understand from the beginning, you're talking about a range extender. The first thing I was thinking of was something on a small trailer, because I remember those from way back when. Then it sounded like you're talking about something inside the vehicle. Is that correct? Jacob, you're muted again.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. These bags are they're from a salvaged 2011 Leaf, and they will be an exact voltage to voltage, capacity to capacity battery that will sit in the trunk, that will go into parallel with the main battery pack in the Nissan Leaf.
Oh, good. I like that
And
idea. Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking a range extender, something a fuel burning type. But okay, you're basically doubling the battery capacity. Great. Yeah.
A gentleman by the name of Muxan or Muxan, I think he's in Holland. He has his own company now where he is providing a range extending service for Nissan Leaf owners over in Europe. So he's been gracious enough to talk to me on Discord and kind of walk me through a lot of the do's and don'ts of range extending. Thankfully, I was able to use the BMS that was within the pack, because that system works passively regardless of any communication from the car. So I don't need to send any kind of CAN bus signal to wake the BMS of that sort. It just works passively with the MOSFETs and whatnot.
Well, that's great. That yeah, you could learn from someone who's done that exactly with the Leaf. It reminds me, Kevin, maybe you can tell me the name. Was it Hometown Hybrids is the name of the company that someone has here in Houston, where they work on batteries of older electrified vehicles. Although I'm thinking that they specialized in replacing Prius batteries. They might have worked on Leafs as well.
Yeah, it's Hometown Hybrids, and they do Priuses.
Okay, so they're not involved with the leaf at all? I wasn't sure if they did maybe battery replacement or something. Okay.
They're just doing the Prius.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
sorry,
go
I
ahead.
was going to ask, is Richie Cook on in this thing?
I saw that he had registered early on, but of the names during the meeting here today, I did not see his name on here. Unless he came in with some other name.
Okay. Well, he was, he had this issue with his Volt, and I was wondering if he had an update on it. But his Volt did have 102,000 miles on it, and so it's post warranty. So I don't know what he's going to do about replacing that pack.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to show or was looking forward to showing the group the progress of the project, but I had to leave. I'm actually in my car right now. I had to go to a signing with a mobile notary, but yeah, it's really convenient how those leaf module cells work. Is you can just run a threaded rod through a cluster of them and create whatever configuration you want. If you want a 48-volt system, 12-volt system, or in the Leaf's case, it's like 400 volts because they're all in series.
Wow, that is good. I didn't realize that. Yeah. Having that flexibility is nice.
Yeah, so like the idea, I guess, for me would be if whenever it is time to retire those battery packs, because they will be out of warranty with the dealership and they won't replace them. It makes sense to put them in an off-grid solar system or in a couple of solar generators, and then just kind of hand those out to people who might need emergency power, like what we saw in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Well, be sure to tune in next month and have your photos ready. It'd be really nice to see the pictures that you have, Jacob.
Yeah, I hopefully should have the whole project done by then.
Oh, even better. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'd be awesome.
You could show us some in progress and then finished and talk about how it runs. Great.
Hey,
Okay.
Dave, do you
Yes.
happen to know, obviously COVID probably interrupted the TXRX's plans of moving to the new space. I think originally they were planning to be in the new space in the spring. And spring is kind of almost over.
Yeah, I don't know. And it looks like Bill Swan has logged off for today. He'd be the person who I would turn to first to find out what Roland is doing in terms of that move. So I'll send him an email and then we can let folks know what's happening with that.
Yeah, do you think maybe by next month we might meet in person? I guess it depends on, obviously, if we have a space to meet in as well. But
Right, it's going to depend upon different things. So yeah, but getting information is kind of the first step. Exactly.
They're looking at a whole new facility to move into?
Yeah, the existing TXRX is leased and the owner wouldn't sell to TXRX. And I guess also they needed more space. And so they looked around, they found, I believe it's off of Navigation, an old kind of a warehouse that was used for different things. And so until they got the property secured, it wasn't let out as to where it was. But then once they had that location purchased or under contract or whatever, they said that's where TXRX is going to move to. So it's a bit southeast of the current location. But yeah, with all these unexpected complications for businesses. I don't know what how that's impacted their move schedule, if it's still on schedule or been delayed. But yeah, it was supposed to be in the summer here that the move was going to happen.
It was nice to see early on that they did a story on TXRX where they were making, printing parts for face shields and things like that.
Yeah, I saw that too. I thought that was great. Yeah, it just shows the flexibility of 3D printers that you can make parts and then assemble those locally, in a city, as opposed to making them somewhere in the world and shipping them. And that was really helping out in a lot of locations with healthcare professionals and so forth. Yeah. Good. Other projects folks are working on. I didn't see Robert Powell sign in today, but he had been in the registration list as well. I think we had about 34 or so in the registration list. Kind of dwindled down here now to the hardy last 8. Since Bill's not here, I can't ask him about TXRX, but it was great to know that he had offered up. So Jacob, you said you went to Bill Swan's latest PV instruction seminar?
Yeah, I had taken my father with me because we recently partnered up with a solar installation company based in San Antonio called Solar Electric Texas, and we're offering our customers PV installs at around 350 a watt grid tied, and so I was trying to get my dad more acclimated to what PV is and how it's normally installed with the roof mounts, different types of roof mounting systems. And as far as I know, I think Bill is probably the expert in Houston because he's done so many DIY systems at his own house.
Right. Yeah. He's constantly rejiggering and adding on and so forth. And it's always great when he can bring out a mobile system to something like Energy Day and other events too. Yeah. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I was looking forward to the Earth Day event, but obviously COVID-19 had postponed that. I had like I guess an inkling to maybe do another side project with maybe like an electric bicycle or an electric scooter, having a little trailer of solar panels behind it, keeping it going, kind of.
You kind of faded out there, Jacob, after the part about solar panels on a trailer.
I'm sorry, I'm connected to my phone, and the LTE kind of drops every now and then.
That's okay.
But you heard up to where I was talking about the solar trailer behind either an electric bicycle or an electric scooter.
Uh-huh. So I see that.
Yeah, because I always think that's a very tangible demonstration of solar directly feeding into a battery pack that is moving a person forward, and they're not having to charge. You know what I mean? It just kind of, I guess, sparks the imagination.
Right. So thinking of projects, I see here Robert Sanchez put on the chat to everyone, I have an older electric bike I can get rid of at no cost to you, 15-year-old mongoose as is. So when he says to you, I'm not sure because he wrote that out to everyone, but so just the folks that are on know that that's available from Robert Sanchez. And the other chat note from him talks about the electric powered Cessna that flew in Washington State. And yeah, I read about that. I think it's a 9-passenger plane and maybe with about a 100-mile range. And they hope to get it certified in like a couple of years. And so that's great to see that activity going on with electrified flight. So any other comments from folks? And then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, because yeah, I wasn't sure if there were any I guess demonstrations Houston did for public school, or like any talks or seminars.
You're cutting in and out again. I heard you talking about college seminars and public schools. I'm not sure what
Yeah,
exactly.
Seminars for kids to.
Well, you faded out again, Jacob. I heard something about kids.
Okay.
Well, Jacob, I see you're muted again. Maybe there's some other sounds there where you're at.
Yeah,
I didn't come into the one by the front.
I have another party in the car with me.
Airline.
Okay, that's fine. We're ready to wrap up. So I couldn't quite hear just the word kids in your last comment.
I was just mentioning putting on like an educational seminar for public school to teach kids about electric cars.
Yeah, over time, there have been a number of things. Back a while, I was involved over a number of years where 5th grade classes at a number of schools would invite us in for what we called solar cars. And they were little shoebox size cars. You'd have 3 typical solar cell size panels that would go on top of these little cars that the kids would build. And it worked out really great for them and very educational. We did it at different schools around Houston. And then there were also middle school projects where we called it Solar Cart, where kids would actually be able to ride in it. And it would get rebuilt every year. And so, yeah, there's different projects. And then there's Ed, who wasn't on tonight. He's done some things with some of the different school kids around town. He's also involved.
A little car that the kids could actually ride in.
Yeah, for the middle schoolers, it was the size of one person, kind of like a little go-kart type thing with a solar panel on top. And yeah, that was a good project for that age of students. So Ed, that I mentioned doing some of the school work with kids, he's kind of more involved on the HREG, Houston Renewable Energy Group side. So you can look up their website, HoustonRenewableEnergy.org, I think is what it is. It's kind of written out more. Then you might ask if you're interested in doing some things with kids, what he's got going on currently.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, because educating the next generation is crucial, of course. Yeah. Okay, I think we can wrap it up here now. This was great. Thanks for all the participation. I'm glad that I mentioned about next month's meeting early before a lot of people had to sign off. So we'll have Jeff Wolf talking about developments in the electrical grid. He's got a small company of his own. And so that ought to be pretty exciting on that side of things. So thanks for all the participation in the poll and asking questions. And I see the last words there in the chat from Robert Sanchez talking about de Havilland Beaver plane that flew in Vancouver late last year, all electric. The tour company wants to go all electric in the near future. Okay, I hadn't heard about that one. That sounds good. All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next month. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dave. Bye.